This is going to be about Vagrant, a tool I'm very passionate about. Who knows about the tool? Just to get an idea. So most of you people, that's a very good sign. Just to start off, it was created by Mitchell Hashimoto and John Bender. I would suggest a round of applause because they did a brilliant job at doing that. It totally changed my life, but more about that later. Based on VirtualBox, Ruby tool runs on Mac, Linux, Windows, so it's pretty open to where it runs. Of course, it's Java. It's not Java, but so I started off on a new project, and usually that's what. Okay, let's start do something. The environment. I was at that part doing some development part, doing some operations, a mixture. So to give you an idea how Vagrant would usually work. It's like 4 simple commands to get it up and running. So you see, first part, install a gem. I guess everybody can install or type that command. That's not too hard. The next part is, okay, Vagrant box add a base box. It's what this actually does. It fetches a box, a predefined box for over HTTP. So you get like an Ubuntu box or whatever you have out there. So you get that going. Next thing is Vagrant init. It creates a config file for Vagrant. And actually what it does in the very, very basic thing, it maps a project file to a box. I'll come over it later, but a box you can see like an AMI on Amazon, but it's like a virtual machine that gets unzipped. So when you say Vagrant up, it extracts the AMI and it creates a VirtualBox instance from that AMI image, from that basebox image, and it boots the VM. And you know what? You're ready. So this is 4 steps to get an Ubuntu machine going in a development environment, ready to SSH in. So you see why I love Vagrant? This reduces very much the setup time. You used to come into a development environment, oh, let's download the CD, let's click on the wizard, see, oh, what options should I enter? Like, you're not used to that. This is like 4 steps, get a new machine, you can work it. So, simplicity. You can do everything with VirtualBox, CLI, and all that stuff, but you get like tons of options. 4 commands, very simple. So, I like that too. Self-servicing, I don't have to ask like a bunch of people to give me a machine, how it's configured. So I can just, when I want, I pull a machine from whatever type I want, self-servicing as a dev. So no Pixie servers asking to set up a machine for me. I get it right on my development box. It's consistent. My colleague will get the same box if he follows the same process. Because usually when you do it manually, he might click some other options. He might install, oh, you know what? I go for all options enabled, things like that. This is the same box, same across developers. It's also repeatable. When I say I just do an up of a machine, it boots, and when I destroy it, I get the same box with the simple 4 commands. Actually, you only have to do destroy and up. So it's that simple. Once you have the base box locally, you can just get it running. So it's repeatability. Everything we love in production, but I can now have on my laptop. It's contained. I don't have to pollute my laptop. Of course, I know many people are actually using virtual machines on their laptop, but it helps you not like install tools like Homebrew for Redis going, and then it's differently on when you start polluting your machine. You have it running on the OS inside the virtual machine that you're actually targeting in production, not on your laptop. So we move up. There's an easy way to bridge a folder in the virtual machine, sorry, a folder of your host machine into a machine, a virtual machine. So that allows you a number of things. I'll come back to that later. And the same thing is when I have an Apache running in the VirtualBox, I can easily access it out of the box on another port. So just by adding a few config files, I say this port locally in the machine maps to my host machine on that port. So I can surf to it. I can use whatever database tool I have on my laptop to connect directly into the virtual machine. So it's non-intrusive. It doesn't tell me, I can still use my favorite tools for IDE, my editor, because I can just use the shared folder, or I can just use the ports. So that's very flexible, where I see people having their Eclipse environment and then SSH into the box, and they, do we need to use VI? And we don't know that. They just use the same tools as they're used to on their development environment. So it's a big plus for me too. Another thing is it's very easy to bring up a stack. So not just one machine. You can just, in Vagrant file, in your config file, define like, okay, web machine looks like this, application is that, database is that. So this is what has that amount of CPU, memory, and so on. So I can just say Vagrant up with a name, or I can say Vagrant up, and it brings like the three machines up, or it brings them down very easily. Okay. Of course, this would only get you like an initial blank system with nothing on it. So if you would continue working on that virtual machine, it would kind of like diverge after a while. Everybody's doing something similar. We learned in production to use cookbooks, manifest, chef, and puppet to start from a just enough operating system base box and then use the configuration management to get it into the state we actually want and to keep it in the state we want. So there is a website where you can download those just enough operating systems for, let's say, Debian and so on. And you see they're like coupled to OS and the kind of provisioner you use, but it's whatever flavor you want, you'll probably find out there. And there's even like a CLI search that you don't have to go to the website. You search, I want that box, and it just installs it on the command line. So another thing is that you can take the base machine, the base box, configure it in a certain state, then you have a VM, but you can create a new base box out of it. So you can distribute it already in a certain state so that another developer or whoever wants to have it in that state can reuse it as a base box. Very similar to, let's say, AMI, snapshot, create a new AMI. So it's actually kind of cloud in a box, I keep saying. But it gives you the same flexibility if you want. So just configuring each of the possible provisioners is a possibility. Chef solo, Puppet standalone, Chef server, if you have more an environment that allows that, or Puppet server. So every option is possible. Scripts is another way. So if you don't use a config management and you just want to use bash, I'm bashing you. So it's just, you can do that if you want. And an experiment I did to get it even easier is that I created a jar file that you just execute. It would download the box and do that everything for you. So how cool is that? You just run, like, execute this box and poof, everything's there. Kind of cool. So if you want to hack on that, look at the proof of concept there. There's another option. There are people who don't like to download the base box. Who has created it? What have they done with it? I want to have my own file system layout. I do geeky things. There's an add-on I created called Vivi that actually simulates a manual install, but does it automated. So you take the ISO, you take a preset file, and you have to see it running, but it starts like actually typing the commands like you would do manually, but it's like automated. So it would boot like boot Linux, HTTP, fetch that preset file, and start the whole configuration. So that's kind of a way of creating bait boxes, no brainer anymore. You just change a preset file, you say, create the box, you have the whole stuff created. So that allows me not only to version control my cookbooks, it also allows me to version control the way how I created the base box. So I have my pre-seed files, I have my initial scripts to get Ruby on that box or Puppet on that box, so I can tweak that later if I want. We even did like complex setups. We were sharing that across multiple developers, and the one guy was doing a Rails app part, the other one was doing for real-time stuff Node.js. We all crammed it in one VM with a Vagrant file with all the configurations. So we had an Hadoop, Flume, everything was running. So imagine coordinating that in the old way, like you say, you know what, you need to do that now manually on your box, and that gets a whole different setup. So it's really helping you to get a shared, the same thing over across multiple developers across your organization. So you can share, of course, every part of it on GitHub. So we see people doing new cool stuff. How do you do your kickstart, your unattended, so you don't have to reinvent the whole wheel again? Or you see, of course, sharing your cookbooks and your manifests. So we can actually share that to the world now. So it's not like something we only need to use internally. So it becomes like a shared code base across all the people using it. And I found out that I was writing the recipes for a team who did the application at that time. And I would sit down, because we were using the same tools. I would tell them, so this is how you write your recipe. And they would pair with me, and I say, okay, I need this configuration file, I need that, and so on. But because it's like, for them, it's just another repository that they've checked out, they could very easily, when they said, my code changes, okay, I know that config file template that I need to change, I'll change it with me, because they could see what the effect was of a provision when they run it again. So it actually kind of melds the different people together working with the same tools on the same set of code. Like a UI person or a backend person and so on, they're working like on the same code base, and they're trying to fit it in the same release. So it's actually about, there was a thing that somebody said it was more like putting dev into ops. No, we put more ops into dev. Because guess what? When we started doing that, they said, oh, you're doing RVM. It compiles all the time. It takes a long time. Can't we improve that? Oh, let's package that. So you see, they already start getting a feeling how it would be running in production while just running their own box. So that's, they had data in the box, they did an upgrade of the code, they did a reprovision, but they forgot that it was already there. So they kind of, oh, we need a migration script, we need start-stop scripts to do that. So all the information or the things you would normally experience in a production environment, with these setup, they were also experiencing it in their development environment. So it kind of changed the way we released. Let's say, normally it was like the apps had a new release, and we figure out in the next release in ops how to deploy that part over. But now, because we're working on the same code base, on the same version, it's just going like synchronously releases. When an admin said, in the next release, I'm going to change, let's say, I'm going to introduce a firewall system, he would just do it immediately, and he would get feedback from the team, because they were just come in the morning, git pull, okay, all of a sudden the firewall is there. So you get immediate feedback while you are doing your sprint or your release cycle in that part. So it increases like the consistency, because you're reusing the production tools in your development environment. You're reusing the config files like pre-seed, your recipes in your development environment. So it actually increases the consistency between the two worlds. For exploring different ways, there is a snapshot. I'm not going to go into it, but it's like a way to, normally you write a recipe, but first you're going to do some manual exploration. So I type this command, is this the correct sequence? Is it working like that? So there is a plugin that allows you to work in a kind of sandbox. You set it on, you do some stuff, you roll it back, and then you write your recipe, and then you use your provisioner. So there was a guy at Nokia who said, let's take it also to the test and QA environment. So he spins up Vagrant boxes in his CI cycle to test his stuff. So it's the same tools, the same recipes for provisioning. He used the snapshotting to say, I do a test, I run something, I roll back. So he has a clean machine every time when he does the testing. So in addition to that, we outgrew, in a way, our local machines. So we said, where are we really like the way Vagrant works, but some of us didn't have enough memory, or the CPU with the complex setup kind of grew outside our box. So we said, let's create a tool that does the same, but just spins up machines on Amazon. So that's the tool of McCloud I created. So the team really liked that they could cross over from one tool to the cloud, and it got them in the same workflow. So a bit of mapping. I told about the base box being AMI, multi-VM. That's easy. Shared folder, that's hard to do from your local machine. So I use rsync to sync local data to the remote machine. Forwarding, it's like an SSH tunnel I create. Package is a snapshot. And I also added the notion of kind of like Rails-env, saying Rails-env dev or Rails-env prod. But it would be like a kind of namespace you're working in. So you just use dev, you run everything, then you promote it to test just by changing the variable, and maybe some settings change. So also the load balancing for, let's say, flipping a load balancer, because Vagrant is just a box, but on Amazon you have more flying parts. And for the bringing up a stack, I use CloudFormation to say stack up, stack down. So you might want to check it out later. So some thoughts that I have on extending it is go beyond Amazon and go to libvirt or VMware, working in the same workflow, but maybe depending on the virtualization you use in your environment to get that going. Extending it that it's not only for Linux environments as a guest, but also maybe Windows running or OS X server if you need to run boxes across that environment. And maybe, I don't know, I got the idea, maybe we really have to integrate it in the dev tools themselves, like go up in Eclipse and say, start, stop, it's just a button, you click and it brings up Vagrant down behind it, or Jenkins for building it in the CI, or Maven deploy maybe against a virtual box machine. And if you take that further, we're so focused on managing servers in production, but we can gain a lot if we start focusing too on getting the development environment consistent across developers, especially across an enterprise that are using all the tools, and they just get like disposable desktops that they can reproduce at home, at work, or wherever they are, just by a few clicks they get the whole environment up. So it's a lot of work, but it gets you going in the train of thought that the reason I love Vagrant. So it gets rid of, it works on my machine. It's not only for devs, they use it to test code, but the same tools are used to test manifests for the configuration part. QA can do it for exploration. They get the box of the latest build and they start seeing on that. And in our team, we even had the sales to show off the latest features, because they could just pull the latest base of working software. They go to a client and they didn't have to wait. They just pulled it out and said, we have the latest features that we can show off to our customers. So I find that kind of neat that it gets across the whole organization. So with one tool, we're bridging like those 4 worlds or even more to, without changing the way or the things they do in their normal thing. So I hope to do a demo tomorrow in the open spaces. And I guess that's about it. So I hope you get to love it. Any questions?
Or should we handle all tomorrow in the
Oh, good.
a couple minutes?
Are
Well,
you deploying a database to run
Yes.
in the same box, or is one side?
He asked if we deploy a database within one box or multi-VM. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So we do it as an additional box. because it has data. That's the key part, and we kind of try to separate that from the real disposable things like front end and the web app and the app stuff, so that we keep it special. But also, one of the reasons we do that is that in production it runs on multiple machines, so we want to mimic the same, like, okay, we need to open a port. Which port do we need to open between the machines? Any more questions?
Going once, going twice. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
Oh.